Steve is the one we owe that to. He's ultimately the one who, his vision for what he wanted to do with Adept at Greene Tweed really kind of pushed us over the edge in terms of prioritizing that capability and getting it done. So let me introduce to you Steve Danasko.
Everyone hear me okay? Good morning, everyone. So today we're going to discuss Adept's, the integration with Greene Tweed into our business integration. A little bit about me. I've been at Greene Tweed for 17 years. Started in drafting, moved into a global drafting role, and essentially to the management role for the global drafting team across the organization. At that time, I was capable to actually implement and project manage the Adept implementation into our environment. I'm a certified SolidWorks professional, so I know a lot about SolidWorks as well, and the integration into Adept. Recently, I moved into our IT Center of Excellence Product Lifecycle Management group based on the implementation of Adept. So we wanted to grow additional capabilities within our SAP environment. And we'll get into some of the integrations from Adept into SAP here in a bit. So today's agenda, we're going to look at Greene Tweed, quick little overview of what Greene Tweed is, what we do, what we had in place prior to the Adept implementation. You'll see how much we struggled with that. The integration requirements with Adept and how we integrated that. Out-of-the-box solutions that we use with Adept, so we didn't have to do a lot of customization. We did have some customization that I'll go through, which Adept support helped us with, as well as what we developed internally at Greene Tweed. Get into the integration solution, what it looks like across the globe, and then the impacts that Adept has on us since we've actually implemented about 5 years ago. Then we're looking at some additional integrations into the SAP environment. So a little bit about Greene Tweed. We are a global organization. We have facilities across the globe, Asia, Europe, United States, manufacturing facilities in the UK, in Asia, and in Houston and in Culpsville, Pennsylvania. We have about 2,200 employees globally, and sales offices in many different locations. So we have about 22 different locations across the organization. We are 150 years old. Actually 153 now, I believe, yes. We manufacture elastomer components, sealing components, and engineered thermoplastics for aerospace, energy, and semiconductor. We also look at injection molded and composite options for the aerospace group as well. Do a lot of different landing gear seals, downhole applications, electrical connectors within those different businesses. I'm going to go through what our environment was prior to Adept. So we had CAD storage, which was across many different file share locations, and I'll show you an example of what that looked like, as well as some independent PDM workgroup vaults using the SolidWorks PDM workgroup. We had a lot of different custom programs to integrate everything from CAD into Lotus Notes through several different options across the organization. And then we actually stored these files in a Lotus Notes database. So we had many different applications that we were using that really didn't interact with everything. So we had to develop a lot of different custom developments. So prior to Adept, these were all different servers that we had with file share locations. So I managed the global drafting team at this point. And we would have a user in Culpsville, Pennsylvania. And for the most part, they would use the server in Pennsylvania. But we supported many different business groups from this location. So really, we could search across all of these different servers looking for CAD models. So everybody had different file structures in every different location. So it was a little difficult to find all of these. So you can imagine if I'm in Pennsylvania and I'm looking for something that's an aerospace product, I have to search through all of these different servers because I don't know who developed it initially. It could take 2 to 3 hours to find something. The same would actually apply for someone in Houston. They could look across many different locations as well. And we'll get to where it looks really bad. Right, so you can imagine one user trying to find something, making phone calls, searching. So it's really caused many problems. One of our integrations, so we had a CAD user this is how we did our approval process and integrated into other solutions within our environments. We had a CAD user. We developed a custom program to populate the CAD file properties and leverage that to actually assign a reviewer for the specific document. So basically, the CAD model converted the PDF and stored in a file share. Along with that was another custom program that actually integrated into Lotus Notes so that a user would receive a notification and then make a decision on that product. So it was a PDF file that they're actually approving. As it continued through the process, once it was actually approved in Lotus Notes, then we actually applied this into a Lotus Notes database. So we added custom properties to the PDF file. The PDF file was then migrated into Lotus Notes, populating the metadata associated with that specific drawing. Now, every user actually had to go to this Lotus Notes to find the released drawing within our environment. We had 5 independent custom programs to do this, all developed by somebody different. So anytime there was an upgrade to an operating system or SolidWorks or Lotus Notes, we had to validate all of these 5 custom programs to move forward, and that was a challenge. Once we actually had the release drawing, we had a centralized location for users or consumers to actually access this drawing. So they would actually have to go to our SAP environment, identify what the drawing number was in the revision, then go into Lotus Notes, search in that database for that part number, validate that that was the right drawing number, as well as the correct revision. Then they would have to launch that and actually print it out and then take it to their workstation. So as I demonstrated, very ineffective search for any of our CAD models. In most cases, people would give up after 10 minutes and then recreate the model. So now you have duplicates all over the place. We had many different file name duplications as well. Whoop, I'm sorry. No CAD relationship fidelity. So we would have several different models all over the place. We would have file shares. We would have a part that was used in several different models, but we couldn't actually identify. We had custom programming, so we had to maintain all of that custom programming as we move forward with any implementation. No CAD file approval. We were only approving the PDF file, not the CAD models. And a very cumbersome search for retrieval of any release drawings, and limited access. Not everybody had access to the Lotus Notes databases. So based on that, we had some specific Adept requirements. So we needed a customized PDM solution for our CAD models. It required vault storage and securities, just like all of you needed for anything else you were doing in Adept. An update of the CAD properties. So reading from the CAD file into Adept and vice versa. It enabled workflow within the environment for the CAD drawings and models. Automated update of CAD properties during the workflow. So there were specific requirements that we have as it goes through the process, and I'll go through exactly what those requirements were on customization. Conversion of the CAD to a PDF file or neutral file format. Integration into our SAP environment. So that would be our single source for any release documents, and link to materials in SAP, and replication, as Scott mentioned, and what Dow's using right now, the AFS system. So I'm going to go through some of the out-of-the-box solutions from Adept. So we leveraged several different plugins, the plugin for SolidWorks. Also, there's a plugin for many other CAD packages as well. The Publish Wave plugin, I'm going to the requirements there. Publish to Adept. Adept Data Export plugin. This will allow us to then integrate into the SAP environment using standard Adept workflow and the AFS system, Adept file system, with the Vault replication. So this will get us into our integration landscape after the Adept. So for SolidWorks, similar to any other plugin, you actually configure this. So here's an example of where we're taking the drawing number and linking it to a custom property within the SolidWorks CAD properties. And this allows us to extract the information from the CAD model, as well as then update that document as it goes through a workflow, or any changes made to an Adept library card. The Publish Wave plugin. So we needed the export of a CAD drawing to go from a SOLIDWORKS drawing to a PDF file. So this is where we have a configuration. We actually configure which libraries are actually going to initiate the publish wave, and then where it goes next. So the configuration, it goes to an output folder on the publish wave server. When it goes to that publish wave server, or the output location, we've defined exactly where this document then goes. So it doesn't actually go into the same exact library where the CAD drawing was. It goes into an unchecked library as a PDF file as a child to that SOLIDWORKS CAD drawing. Once that is actually checked in, we actually export using the data exporter from Adept plugin. This allows us to define the specific fields that we want to export from the Adept library card or Adept fields to an XML file. So this XML file is then generated upon check-in of the PDF file. This allows us then, we'll get to that next. So that allows us to export all the information that we want out so that we can integrate into our SAP environment. We leverage standard Adept workflow. So the Adept workflow customized just exactly how we want it, out-of-the-box solution. So there's no customization within the workflow setup. And then we have the Adept file system. So as Dow was mentioning, we actually have specific libraries that we replicate. We have a hub in Culpsville, Pennsylvania. And then we have 3 different satellite vaults across the globe. We have one in Houston, in the UK, as well as in Singapore. So as a user in Houston would sign in a document into one of those AFS libraries, on schedule, it will actually replicate back to the hub in Culpsville and then replicate those files off to the other locations. The same would apply coming from a different satellite up to the hub and replicating to the other facility vaults. So this gives everybody quick access. We were actually only replicating libraries that have CAD files. We're not replicating anything that has any PDF files or Word documents, only CAD files at this point. So now we have all of the Adept solutions that we can use, and now we needed some custom programming to enhance our program. So we had to look at a workflow enhancement. So what we needed in our workflow enhancement, we needed the capability to validate the user, who was making the decision and actually capturing that decision. Update of the library card, so as a user made the decision, we want to push back the user and a custom date back to the library card. So then we can leverage that to then update the SOLIDWORKS CAD models and drawings. And we had a custom date that Greene Tweed uses on our drawings. We also had an additional RFC we had to create to integrate into our SAP environment. So this actually allows us to take the information from the data exporter, filter through that information, and then create and update materials within the SAP environment. So the workflow enhancement, we wanted to still use the standard workflow functionality, but enhance that a little bit. And like I said, identify the user, validate the user upon the decision, and update the documents. So here's an existing workflow at the top, and then on the bottom is a custom program that Wayne Hank's team helped us develop. And what we're doing is actually just demonstrating that this is exactly the same, the 3 workflow steps. Nothing special to the workflow, but customization. And within this customization, we want to identify the user, like I said. So we validate based on the username within the Adept environment, and any decision that is made has to have a password signature. So this validates that I'm not sitting at Paul's desk and going in and approving something for him. They have to enter their password to actually approve a document. So with this, it allows us to configure based on decisions, based on the steps of the workflow. We define a specific field within the Adept library, within the Adept configuration. So here we see we have a check by. We have a check by on the library card, and based on the decision, here's the audit trail on the right-hand side, the decision from Sanawaz was on that date, It pulls his name, puts it into that field, and then actually updates the date value as well with our custom date functionality. As it goes through the workflow, you have the approval as well. We also want to update an additional field. So within Greene Tweed, we've defined a specific lifecycle status for Greene Tweed documents. We don't go with the Adept in or assign review. We have a lifecycle status of in design, in review, pending checking, etc. So as a document goes through the process, we have an additional field that we actually change as it goes through the workflow. So when a decision is made, it then changes the lifecycle status field on our library card, as well as to our custom properties in our CAD models. So here's an example of the signatures being populated back to the library card. But as we launch the CAD models, we can see here that it actually updates with the users that actually completed the decisions in our title blocks. And here on the bottom right here are the custom properties. So it's pushing back to the models. So now it's captured within those models and CAD files. The same thing with the release side, with the lifecycle status. That is also a custom property in our SolidWorks environment. It allows us to quickly see where anything is within the process. So now we have the workflow integration. Now we have a custom program that we need to develop in-house to integrate with our SAP environment. Our requirements were to take the information from the CAD drawing and create the material master within SAP. We also create a document info record in SAP, which is SAP Document Management System. So this is a record that contains the original file and its additional metadata, and actually links directly back to the Adept vault. We also want to establish a link between the document info record and the material master, so it's bidirectional. So if I look at a material master, I can find the drawing. If I look at a drawing, I can find the material master. In some instances, we may have many material masters to one document info record. So to create the material master, leveraging the XML file export from the data exporter, we publish all of those fields, and then we can see how it maps up the XML file to the library card. So here's the part number, here's the revision. To make it a little more simple, I'm just going to map it to the library card in this instance. So this is a material master within the SAP environment. So this material master is created once the document is published to Adept. So PDF file is then generated, checked into Adept, XML files created, and now we have the creation of the material master. So based on the part number field, we create the material within the SAP environment. We also populate the description, the division. I said we have many different divisions, document number, and document version. So this would apply to the document number within the Adept environment as well as the revision. We also create the document info record. So in this instance, it's very similar. It's just a different object in SAP. So we create a ZMF document type. It's a manufacturing drawing. Populate the description. And you'll see down here in the bottom, original files. So this original file is based on the file name, but you'll see there's an unlock right there. So that means that this document is not checked into the SAP environment. It's actually linked directly to the vault. So everyone is actually accessing directly from the vault. So we don't have different copies of this document across the organization. One centralized document accessed from Adept or from SAP. That's cool. So here's the object links within SAP. On the left-hand side is the material master. On the right-hand side is the document info record. You'll see we have object links. So like I said before, I can go to a document info record, double-click that material master. It'll take me right to that material master, and I can see everything about the material master, and vice versa. So you can see we actually have several different documents associated with one material master. what I have highlighted here is manufacturing may have inspection drawings or other documents created within the Adept environment that are linked to that material master as well. So we added another little enhancement. It wasn't part of our requirements, but for the first implementation, based on the data exporter, we actually allow a user to check out the released PDF file in Adept, and they have the capability to stamp it with an ECN pending. When they check that back in, it actually creates a new version within the Adept environment. We have a special field on our Adept library called block production. So what this allows us to do is not only change that release drawing to ECN pending, so if anybody displays that document, they'll see that it's ECN pending, but we can also block production within this environment by putting a cross-material status of block across the organization. So this will stop any production orders, work in progress, for any of those documents that are now pending ECN. So before we could never do that. It was all manual. You'd have to call somebody or send emails. Now we can actually do it in real time. So this is what our integration solution looks like. All of those pieces together, we took a lot of standard Adept functionality, some customization that Adept helped us with, and customization with Greene Tweed to actually go through this process from CAD drawing sign-in through the approval to release documents within the SAP environment and Adept. So we'll start again. We initiate the workflow by signing the document in to the Adept server and Adept Vault using a custom programming with the standard workflow with Adept, populating the signatures, the decisions, the dates, and the lifecycle status onto the CAD models. Once it hits final approve, it engages with the Publish Wave plugin. This is where we then convert the CAD drawing to the PDF file. Once that, it goes to an output location on the Publish Wave server, leveraging the Publish to Adept to sign that document in to Adept and create the child relationship to the parent CAD file. The data exporter then engages on sign-in of the PDF file. That XML file is then generated. Our custom program creates the material master, creates a document info record, establishes the links, and now everybody across the organization has access to that release drawing within the SAP environment. Okay. Not done yet. So just wanted to give you an idea of everything across Greene Tweed, our integrated solution, our landscape. So our Adept server is actually in our Culpsville facility. We have a vault there. We have the Publish Wave server there as well with the Publish to Adept. And those users in Culpsville actually use that specific vault. We have a vault in our Fremont, California location. When a user there signs in a document into a library, it goes through the approval process. We then use the Publish Wave server up in KV to actually then convert the PDF file. Okay. We have users in Korea and Taiwan that use this vault in Fremont. We have in Houston, Texas. The only thing different there's no Adept server there. We have the Publish Wave server there, the Publish to Adept, and a satellite vault. Users from Selma, Singapore has a vault. Singapore uses the Publish Wave within the Houston environment as well. And then we have users in Japan that use Singapore. Nottingham, users there with France and Germany using that location as well. We have a standalone vault in Switzerland just for development. And then we have our SAP environment. So SAP is looking to all the vaults in KV, the UK, and Houston for the release drawings. That's the direct links. And now we have every user across the organization has access to SAP to have access to our release drawings. Pretty cumbersome, but it works. So, our integration summary. So, single source of CAD for everybody. So now we don't have all those file shares. Everything is in Adept. Embedded workflow. So this allows us to review every document. Update of the key characteristics as it goes through the workflow and through the process. Standard neutral file format conversion. And block material for production for engineering changes. Non-Adept users, we now have the capability to automatically create material masters in SAP, create the documents in SAP, and give them access to that at any given time. Bidirectional links between the material masters and object links, quickly find documents within the SAP environment. Single source for all release documents, or for all release drawings. Same file, just different applications to access that file and quickly identify any documents or materials that may be blocked for production with the integration into Adept. So some of the impacts it had on Greene Tweed. So now we can actually collaborate across the organization. It's very difficult to do that before. Call somebody up, go to this file share, try to find it, and do something. We have the approval. Relationship fidelity. Before we didn't have that in a file share structure. Standard naming conventions. This allows us to get metrics. Vault replication, which is actually very huge for us. Standard CAD templates and custom properties. Reuse of designs and workflow tasks. So a little example of collaboration. Like I said, we do work across the globe. Our businesses are many different locations, but I have an example here where a design actually started in the UK. This user actually started the design and then pushed it off to another individual. The next individual is actually another user, replication. I'm going to go through that first. So the user in the UK signs the document in, using the replication, goes to the hub, and then replicates back to the satellites. You have another user in the UK that will then access this, make some changes. We're redesigning an assembly here. Replication as usual. Now we have collaboration with the Houston facility here. So now somebody in Houston is actually reviewing this, making some comments, making some changes to the design, and allows for the replication for quick access for everybody there as well. So in this scenario, we had several different users across the globe actually accessing this file and making changes, really in real time. So we can pass things along, and in some cases we'll go from Houston to Singapore to the UK to France. It allows us real quick access to all of these files without long downloads. It allows us to quickly design things within that environment, passing it on, instead of having one location review all of these documents. We can start designing in Singapore and have it completed within 12 hours, approved by Houston. Drawing approval collaboration. Some examples. Typically, any of our documents are not approved in the same location. They're approved across the globe, similar as the design process is. So in this instance here, the design started in Singapore, went to Japan, and was approved in France. So it's actually all approved rather quickly. Another example, going from Pennsylvania to UK to France, or to Germany, or to France to UK in this instance. And then you have instances where there's a lot of different design iterations as it's going through the approval process. So this kind of went from Houston to the UK or France, and then back to Houston with some design iterations. So it allows us the capability to use many different users that are accessible at that time to actually make design changes. Typically, there's not one individual that's assigned to a project. It's usually a group, and multiple individuals that can support that group. So it gives us a lot of flexibility to get designs completed rather quickly. The relationship fidelity. So here's an example of an old file share. So we have many different documents, parts, assemblies within this file share. So what we didn't have before was the visibility to see where this was used. So this part was used in several different assemblies. So in the past, somebody would come here and find that part, make a change, and not realize it was used in 3 other assemblies. Next time you go to look at the part, the other assembly, now it's all changed. So we didn't have that visibility in a file share. So this allows us to actually see what it would affect, and then do an analysis to decide if we're going to make a change to that product or assign a new part number so we don't screw up any of the other assemblies associated with that file. So in a file share, you could not tell that at all. And honestly, when we migrated things in, we realized this, and people were making changes and saw all these different things changing, and it was not very friendly that day, I would say. Just another example where we have a part that's used in 4 different assemblies. So I blame the semiconductor group on this. No other business actually did this, but we'll blame semiconductor. Standard naming conventions. So in our file structures, we actually had different folders as well. So if you look here, we actually have the same exact files that are named exactly the same, but they're actually different. But they're used in different assemblies. So we would actually copy this out. Somebody would copy this out, use that, make a change to the design, sign it back in to a different folder location, right? So now you have duplicate file names across the organization. Try to migrate that into Adept, forget about it. It's not going to work. It's all based on the last saved. And actually, if I was in this folder and I open up these files and open up the other drawing would be screwed up, all right? So we didn't have that visibility for it, and now we have eliminated that using Adept in relationships. So we have different naming conventions based on that. So now we can actually differentiate where actually the files go. Metrics. So with our homegrown custom programs, we really couldn't capture any metrics. So we have those specific fields. We have drawn by dates that are populated based on decisions. So now they're obviously not nearly as streamlined as Dow had presented, but we can export this to an Excel file and run reports on it. See how long it takes from one phase to the other during the drawing approval or CAD model approvals. Additional impacts, the vault replication really was a huge impact for us, especially in Asia. Quickly access these documents, scheduled and on-demand replication. So we have it scheduled, but as a user wants to actually download something, if it wasn't replicated yet, it will on-demand replicate. It has, binary differencing, Todd? So it doesn't actually take the whole file, it just takes the changes and replicates that change to the files. If you want to know more about that, you can talk to Todd. Standardized CAD templates. So like I said, we had different businesses, different locations. Everybody had their own CAD templates, CAD properties. We took that opportunity with the Adept implementation to standardize on what those properties are and what those templates are as well. The reuse of designs. Obviously, we couldn't reuse designs because we couldn't find existing designs earlier. So now this gives us the capability to find something similar and allows us to then take that, copy it out, make some changes, and quickly redesign. Really, we've seen about a 25% reduction in design based on that. We do a lot of different copies now than what we used to in the past. And workflow tasks. We never really had a workflow that was audit trailed. All right, and this actually gives us the opportunity to audit trail that, as well as we were only assigning one single individual for each task. So if that individual was on vacation or out of the office, it could sit there for several days. With Adept, we define the group. Now we have multiple individuals that could review that. Some future enhancements that we're looking at. Integration into SAP with our incremental design process. Some link to Adept documents, the final design population, and then engineering bombs and how we want to integrate that into SAP as well. So it's incremental design. We actually went live with this on Monday. We pushed it up for some reason. So I'm actually supporting that while I'm here. But when I created the presentation, this was actually in the future. So as Norm mentioned yesterday, ALS files. ALS files are actually a huge impact for us. And we wanted to leverage that within our SAP environment. So as we go through an incremental design, engineers may want to pass things on without a workflow within the Adept environment, specifically to our drafting group. So they can actually go into Adept and search, highlight the specific models or documents that they want to provide to the drafter who they're assigning the task to. So by highlighting those, we can actually go to and send this to an ALS file and name that ALS file. So you have different options there. You can email those, but we're saving it as an ALS file. And this allows us to then create a document info record within the SAP environment for a specific incremental opportunity. So what the user does is creates this document info record. And when a user comes in and accesses this, as soon as they double click on that link, it launches Adept and takes them to those specific files that were defined to that ALS file. This is going to save us a tremendous amount of time through our incremental process. The last implementation with this last go live was a link to the inquiry object and final design. So as we went through an incremental process, we could identify part numbers, but there was, in our process was in Lotus Notes. The Lotus Notes was a text field, so you really couldn't take that information and go to SAP to find out what your hit rate was on these new products that you're designing. What this allows us to do, by using an inquiry number field in the Adept library card, we can actually then search on that, but also on final design approval, as it goes through the data exporter and develops the product, the material in SAP, it actually establishes another object link to an object called an inquiry. The inquiry then will add the part number and the drawing to the final design process. So once we have a final design is linked to this incremental opportunity, we now have the part numbers associated with that incremental opportunity. So now we can run reports on what is our hit rate, how much are we selling based on this incremental opportunity, how much time do we spend on this incremental opportunity, and how much are we making based on that. So an enhancement that we've never had in the past. We've never had visibility of that functionality. And my last wish list here is engineering BOM. So what we would like to do is actually take the engineering BOM from the SOLIDWORKS CAD drawing, and upon final approval, export that bill of material to an XML file. That XML file will then be read in and create an engineering bill of material within the SAP environment. So what this, we're pushing the configuration and the components of the CAD model to SAP and saying, this is what engineering is saying what this bill of material should be. That gives them the opportunity then to create a sales and distribution or a manufacturing bill of material within the SAP environment by syncing down to that specific bill of material and making any changes that they may need from a manufacturing or sales and distribution perspective. Currently, everybody's going in and manually typing all of this information. We want to automate that as best we can. So in summary, you saw what a mess we had before. And you see our new solution, leveraging a lot of different out-of-the-box solutions from Adept, enhancements that Adept helped us with, as well as internal to Greene Tweed, the impacts, and what we're looking at in the future. That short-term future, we do have long-term visions, but I didn't want to bore you with all those details. So that's all I had today. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one. Before Monday, when you implemented the ALS export or link from SAP, you mentioned earlier in your presentation that you had a direct link to the vault through SAP.
Yes.
So you were also using AFS, so were those links only read-only?
The links are only read-only.
Okay.
So it's based on the configuration of access
Right.
for that specific vault. So there are only like 2 or 3 individuals that have change access to that.
Gotcha.
Everybody else has read-only.
Cool.
If you have a question, guys, raise your hand and we'll get you a mic.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Steve, is that link going to just the viewer? Or is it actually going to the Adept vault and pulling up the the original CAD file?
The original file. It's actually not going to a CAD file. We're only linking to PDF files right now.
Okay.
But yeah, it's directly to that file.
When you talk about, are you actually using the material in SolidWorks for anything?
Not yet.
Yeah, okay. Have you found a way to find that material?
That's a challenge in SolidWorks, is to get all of our materials within that
Yeah.
environment. And honestly, our SAP master data is not very clean when it comes to material, unfortunately. So we have to fix that before we can actually.
That's something we have to achieve eventually. And then you're only doing one configuration per part, right?
Yes.
To make that link work, okay.
Yes.
Make sure I'm clear. Are you capturing properties from the SolidWorks when you convert into PDF?
No.
Okay.
It's not going to the PDF file. Our previous integration, where we developed, we actually published properties to the PDF file, and that was used to create the Lotus Notes entry. Acrobat changes their API too much to actually try to maintain that, unfortunately. I think that's probably why it's difficult for Synergis to extract that information as well.
Do you have to link, custom SAP in order to link to open that file in Adept or in the Vault?
No. It's direct link right to that PDF file, so anybody that has access to that document info record can just launch that file in PDF.
But if you go to SAP and you want to view that file can you launch that from SAP, or you have to go directly into the Vault? You have to go to a different location?
No, you can go directly from SAP. You click that link, it'll display that file for you from the Vault.
But someone have to set the link up, right?
That's through our automation. Yeah, somebody has to set that link up.
So
We do it through the RFC.
So you have to basically do some custom on SAP side.
Yeah, you'd have to develop an RFC to read that in.
Okay, thanks.
How do you handle training to keep everybody up to speed on how to use this correctly, from a CAD user to other levels? What's your training program like?
Right now, when we first implemented, we identified subject matter experts. So we trained everybody across the globe, and special training for subject matter experts or super users. And those super users actually train at the locations now.
It sounds like you've got a decent amount of custom programming that you used. I'm curious, has that slowed down you upgrading to newer versions of Adept? What version of Adept are you
We're on
running
Adept
right now?
2013 right now. We are upgrading to 2015 by January. And then 2017, we're expected in another 6 months. So we don't have a lot of custom programming now. The RFC is based on the XML file. The only other custom programming would be through Adept. That- Right. And the XML file from the plugin should be consistent with future releases. I mean, we will test it, but the XML file should be consistent. RFC in SAP only reads the specific fields, so that shouldn't be a problem. But we will test it before we go live.
The 2017 CPs are in QA, by the way. I had a question. You had a couple of metrics, 25% reduction time in design. You cited a couple of examples of really fast turnaround, where the design was done in the US and then approved in France within 12 hours. Do you have any sort of broader metrics? We reduced cycle time by X. It used to be X and now it's Y.
We can guess on what it was before,
Yeah.
because we didn't have the capability to capture those metrics. Now we have the capability, but we've seen when we first implemented Adept to a 25% increase now, based on, you can look at the audit trail and the metrics and see that that design used to take 5 days and now it's down to 3.5, 4 days, based on the collaboration. Sure. Pretty much now. No, there are some Adept administrators that take care of some of the workflow and users, but I was away from it for a couple years. Now I'm pulled back in, so I'm pretty much maintaining everything now. And
How do you go about when you want to integrate with SAP? You're impacting the SAP people. It's costing money internally. How do you present all this to management to kind of pave the way to let you do this?
well, everybody wants to go to SAP, unfortunately.
Oh.
I'm still pushing for a lot in Adept, but with our new document management system in SAP, as a global implementation for other users to use that. But we want to take more of the CAD information and get that into the SAP environment so that we can measure different things. It's really around, with the new implementation, you didn't have visibility of this before. We can make a change that's going to take 2 days in the RFC to now allow us to capture that information. So a lot of the integration we've developed, we're just expanding that. So we're not investing a lot of time developing those new solutions. It's tweaking this or that based on Adept, because the library card are different Adept fields that we can use to integrate to several different things. So when we first developed it, we applied a lot of different fields within the Adept environment. knowing that this would integrate into different solutions. So that inquiry field has been there from day one. Now we're finally using it. So I had a vision for certain things.
Have you found a big cost savings on your licensing, pushing the
Yes.
drawings to SAP?
Yes. We have 50 licenses. We started with 50 licenses. We still have 50 licenses.